I hate Mondays, thought Sergeant Roland Martin as his cell phone rang in his pocket. He hadn't even taken the first bite of the 3 chocolate donuts he'd bought at Dunkin' Donuts on his first coffee break, in a week when the damn phone rang. Seriously, has anyone died? And so it was. Corpse at 1492. Sumner Avenue, Raleigh, Lieutenant Steve Gray said dryly. The dispatcher called the unit to find the front door open, and when the patrolman went inside, he discovered the body. You might want to finish those donuts, I know you have, because the guy was new, and this was his first corpse. Thank you for the warning, Lieutenant, he said with disgust. Raleigh. Leslie Bingham, listening to the conversation, was stuffing half a Boston cream donut into her mouth. For the 1000th time, Raleigh noted how much his partner looked like his wife's little sister. We're done, and I wouldn't bother finishing off the rest. Drop the cakes, and I'll get the coffee. Meet me in the car, and I'll fill you in on things. 2 patrol cars were parked outside the house with their headlights on when 2 homicide officers pulled up. One of the 4 patrolmen was half sitting in the passenger seat of one of the cars, his face buried in a barf bag. Raleigh and Bingham carefully entered the house and headed towards the bedroom where the body was found. There were 2 other patrolmen in the bedroom, both holding handkerchiefs to their noses because of the stench. The victim is McAllister Leonard, a 28-year-old unmarried artist who lived in the house for about 2 years after moving here from Portland, Oregon. 1 shot to the back of the head. Appears to be a .22, fired at close range. Appears to be from someone the victim knew and trusted, said the senior patrolman at the scene, Sergeant Bill Ford, a veteran cop who knows his stuff, thought Raleigh. It doesn't look like anything was taken. His wallet was on the dresser, the TV was intact, and nothing seemed missing. Now, if you don't mind, we're going to go out and get some fresh air. Call us if you need anything else. Raleigh nodded, and Bill Ford and the remaining policemen quickly ran out the door. Bingham began photographing the crime scene while Raleigh wandered around the house. He was somewhat surprised to find 2 types of shampoos and 2 types of conditioner in the shower stall, men's and women's. In fact, he absent-mindedly noted that 1 set of shampoo and conditioner were the same products his wife used. There's definitely been a woman staying here from time to time, he shouted to Bingham, when further searching turned up a woman's hairbrush and a bottle of White Shoulders perfume in a bathroom cabinet drawer. Probably an elderly woman, judging by the perfume. I'm buying them for Sandy, and the girl at the store told me that almost no one under 40 buys them. He removed some of the blonde hair from the brush and placed it in a plastic bag for DNA testing. He put the brush in another bag so the lab could check for fingerprints. Raleigh worked that job for 22 years and was good at what he did. His instincts led him back to the bedroom, where he began checking various drawers in the closet. He noted that in one of the drawers there were several items of women's underwear, and in the closet there were several items of women's clothing that would last for several days of dressing. There was an ugly yellow tracksuit, similar to the one his wife sometimes wore around the house, before she finally got rid of the suit to stop her husband's dissatisfaction. Raleigh didn't move for about a minute and realized he had stopped breathing when he looked at the tracksuit. He reached into the closet, took the suit off the hanger, and was examining it carefully when Bingham interrupted his thoughts. Whoever she is, she doesn't have very good taste, Leslie said. Yes, whoever came up with this should be punished, he quickly jokes. Raleigh, to hide your thoughts. Raleigh put the suit back in the closet, noticing that it was the same size as what his wife wore. He felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. Maybe you should go out for a few minutes too, Raleigh. You look white, like a ghost, Bingham said. Yes, good idea. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Carefully watching where he steps, Raleigh went outside. His brain thought you were 18 directions at the same time. He was certain that what he saw in the house was the end of his 27-year marriage, although he was thinking clearly enough to check for fingerprints first. He will take something from Sandy's house and give it to the fingerprint experts. He will do this before the end of his shift. 27 years have flown by with the snap of a finger. I thought to myself, Raleigh. Crap. He loved her. She obviously did not love him, and if she did, it was not too devoted. He felt an abomination emanate from the depths of his stomach. He doubled over. "I've never seen you do this before, Raleigh, but I don't blame you. It was pretty disgusting," Leslie said as she approached. Raleigh was confused, even if it wasn't for the reason Bingham thought. There was no way he could tell her about this right now, even though they talked about almost everything that was going on in their lives. As he expected, Raleigh received an answer I didn't want before the end of the shift. He knew that he had to refuse to participate in this matter, and he went to see his commander. "I have a fucking big problem, Lieutenant," he said. Raleigh, entering the commander's office. "Looks like my dear wife has been cheating on me with a dead guy for a while now, long enough that she had some clothes and stuff in his house." Gray's head came up from the papers he was looking through, as if spring-loaded, and he stared, mouth agape, at his charge. Despite the fact that Raleigh expected such a reaction, he still blushed deeply. "I compared the fingerprints on the comb I found at his house with things from our house that had Sandy's prints on them. Bingo. She had clothes and other things there. I never had the slightest idea. I guess I'll find out tonight how long this has been going on." "I'm sorry, Roll." "Indeed," Gray said. "Do you think she killed the guy? A ballistic examination may not be carried out until tomorrow. Bill Ford said he thought it was a .22. Does Sandy have a .22? "Crap. She has. I'll find it and bring it later." "If it turns out to be that .22, you guys can breathe out," said Raleigh. "Do I think she killed the guy? If you had asked me yesterday, I would have said that there is no way she could kill anyone. But I would also say that there is no way she could cheat on me. Obviously, I'm an idiot, boss. You know we have to bring her in for questioning. Do you want me to send a couple of uniformed cops to your house? Or will you bring them yourself?" "I think it's best if I do this, boss. Although it may take me a little time." "We need to talk about something," he said. Rowley. Sandy was surprised when she pulled into the driveway to find her husband's car already there. This was a rare occurrence, and usually only happened if she was late at her job as a real estate agent. She found her husband sitting at the kitchen table drinking a cup of coffee. "What a pleasant surprise! You came back early for a change," Sandy said, walking through the kitchen. "Let me put on a pair of sweatpants and I'll start cooking dinner." "Did you love him, Sandy? Did you love Leonard McAllister?" asked Raleigh in a voice barely louder than a whisper. Sandy stopped in her tracks, her shoulders visibly tense. She felt like her husband had just hit her from behind. Her first reaction was to run away, but her feet seemed to be glued to the floor. Several seconds passed before she was able to turn to face Raleigh, although she could not look him straight in the eyes. "I believe I have developed feelings for him." "I'm sorry, Raleigh." Her eyes filled with tears as their gazes met. She could see the terrible pain in the eyes of the man who exchanged wedding vows with her 27 years ago. She walked over on trembling legs and sat down at the table next to her husband. "How long did it last?" he hissed. "About 2 years. I showed him a few houses when he moved here and we just kind of hit it off. It just happened that way," she replied. 2 years. "It just happened that way," he repeated quietly. The woman began to closely examine the wooden surface of the table with her eyes. She wanted to cry, but she was suddenly afraid of how he would react to it. "We got together sometimes during the day, sometimes in the evening when you worked late. His schedule is pretty flexible, and you know most of my hours are flexible," she explained. "His schedule isn't as flexible anymore, Sandy. He's in the morgue with a bullet hole in the back of his head, and you're our #1 suspect." Raleigh had to reach out and grab his wife's arm to keep her from falling off the chair onto the floor as her eyes rolled back into her head and she passed out. He lifted her from the chair and carried her to the sofa in the living room. Sandy came to, sobbing, while Raleigh stood nearby. He noted that the fainting seemed real enough, but her imitation of a loving wife, for the past 2 years while she was fucking another man, also seemed real enough. "You know I didn't kill him. You know I couldn't do anything like that, don't you, Raleigh?" she begged. "Until this morning, I would have agreed. But if you could have sex with another man for 2 years, I think you were capable of much more. Right now, I don't trust you at all. The tears flowed more intensely. Raleigh snorted, growing angrier by the minute. He had so many questions that he almost didn't know where to start. "When was the last time you saw that idiot, Sandy?" he growled. "Are you going to interrogate me as a suspect?" "In our own home?" She squealed uncertainty. "At the moment, yes, because I'm not going to look like a complete ignorant idiot when we get to the station. Answer my damn question." "We were together on Friday evening while you were working, but he was very much alive when I left around 11. Why should I kill him? Why would you cheat?" She winced, but didn't answer. As the seconds passed, Raleigh realized that she probably thought it was more of a rhetorical question. "No, I'm serious, San. Why would you cheat?" "I'm not quite sure why, Raleigh. The kids are gone. You've been working crazy hours. I was starting to feel like I was getting old. One day, he came to the office looking for real estate. He was handsome and sweet, and he started flirting. I should have put an end to it, but I guess I was so flattered that a man only slightly older than our children wanted me. We had several lunches and dinners and looked at houses, and when we found a house that suited him, we celebrated in the bedroom. Somewhere deep down, I knew it was wrong, but it still felt so right. It was almost like it was separate from you and me, and it kind of stayed that way." "Enough. Where's your 22? He asked hoarsely. "Where I always keep it, on the top shelf of my closet, under a couple of scarves." "You know that," she croaked. "Sit. I'll bring it," he said, Raleigh rising to his feet. He returned a minute later with a gun wrapped in a plastic bag. She looked surprised. "What are you talking about?" she began before he interrupted. "It was recently shot. What the fuck?" he shouted. Her mouth opened, but she could not speak. "Get in the car, Sandy. It's time for us to go. Call Bobley Heru on the way there." Sandy sat in the passenger seat as Raleigh drove to the police station. She felt the rage emanating from him in waves. "You have clothes and toiletries in his house," hissed Raleigh, after about 10 minutes of silence. "Did you ever plan on leaving me for him?" "Hell, you decorated his kitchen and living room just like ours. I didn't think about it at all." "Honestly?" she said quietly. They drove the rest of the way in silence. When Raleigh turned off the engine, he looked at his wife again. "One more thing I need to know. Were there others?" She couldn't say a word, but shook her head. Raleigh took his wife to the commander and then left. "Wait, where are you going, Raleigh?" she asked. "He's off the case now, Sandy." "You're a suspect, so he can't be involved," Lieutenant Gray said. "But you know me, Steve." "You know that I'm not a murderer," she begged her husband's boss, who was also an old friend. "I'm sorry, Sandy. Call to your lawyer right now. Then Detectives Polson and Zambrano will take you in for questioning. They won't ask anything until your lawyer arrives," Gray said. Raleigh reported his time for the entire weekend, including several hours on Sunday afternoon when he watched baseball with Gray and 2 other officers at Gray's home. At this time, Sandy showed a house outside the city. Detectives interrogating Sandy soon discovered that the latter statement was false. Sandy waited 2 hours for the people who had booked the show to show up, but all she got was 2 hours of reading the Sunday paper in the car while drinking coffee. At the time she got home, Raleigh was at Gray's house watching baseball, so she couldn't justify about 4 hours. "So you don't have an alibi for Sunday," Zambrano said. "Did you even mention this to your husband?" She looked indignant, but shook her head negatively. Unfortunately for Sandy, working quickly in the lab worked against her. The bullet recovered from the victim matched Sandy's gun exactly, and it was determined that Leonard had died on Sunday afternoon, at a time for which she had no alibi. By Tuesday afternoon, she had gone from simply being held in custody to being arrested. Raleigh's life went from good to terrible in less than 48 hours. Although he didn't want to do it, he decided he needed to tell his children what happened. Both seemed upset that their mother had cheated on him, but neither of them thought that their mother would actually kill her lover. They were upset that Raleigh wasn't 100% convinced that she wasn't the killer. "Dad, it's Mom." "You know better than anyone that she couldn't have killed anyone," said the eldest, 24-year-old Jack. "Don't be petty, Dad," chided his 21-year-old daughter Ellie, a graduate of Ohio State University. "Of course it's bad that she cheated on you, but you can't think that Mom could kill someone." Raleigh felt betrayed by his children's careless attitude towards their mother's 2-year affair. Raleigh knew that legally he couldn't stop his wife from returning to their home after she posted bail, but he moved all of her clothes into the guest room while she was in jail. He briefly considered moving into the guest room himself, but decided he would stay in his bed and force his cheating wife to sleep elsewhere. "It was you who had a lover, and I can stay in my bed," he said irritably when she began to challenge his decision. The couple lived separately in the same house, barely speaking or eating together. Sandy's attempts to apologize somewhat fell on deaf ears. "I'm sorry for everything, Raleigh. Really? I still love you. I have feelings for you," Sandy once said. "You only regret that I found out," he replied. Raleigh: "You dated him for 2 years. You deceived me and lied to me for 2 years. For God's sake, you fell in love with this guy. How interesting is it that you can care about me, feel sorry for hurting me?" "I may have been an ignorant, gullible fool, but I pulled my head out of my ass. You can't treat me the way you did and still tell me that you have feelings for me other than pity. Maybe." At Sandy's request, the children came home for a couple of weeks. They were shocked by their father's cold treatment of their mother. "Dad, Mom is going to be tried for murder, and all you can think about is that she cheated on you," Ellie said sharply. "I think you should put off cheating until after the trial and then worry about your marriage. She could go to jail for a long time, Dad. Doesn't any of you care that the guy she cheated with is the guy who got killed? I can't get past this. She cheated on me for 2 years, kept clothes in his house, and she loved him. And it really looks like she killed him. A lover's quarrel? I don't know, but her problem with him is also her problem with me. Should I blindly support her after she's been having an affair for the last 2 years? Hell, if he hadn't been killed, she probably would have left me for him someday. And we're not even going to talk about the cost of a murder trial. At least it will reduce the amount I have to split with her in the divorce. The price of a lawyer? God, Dad, who knew you were such a selfish pig?" Jack yelled at him. "It's not about the money, it's about everything. Betrayal, lies, deception, her betrayal, the fact that she slept with another man for 2 years because he said beautiful words to her when she felt old and vulnerable. My words didn't mean a damn thing to her," he said. Raleigh. A few days later, things went from bad to worse for Sandy. Poulsen and Zambrano learned that Leonard apparently took 2 more mistresses after he began dating Sandy. This gave her a strong motive for murder, although both had to admit that she seemed devastated when they told her about their findings. "He wouldn't do that to me," she muttered quietly in response, her eyes filling with tears. "He loved me. He told me this many times. I told him that I love him." Raleigh was disheartened when he heard her reaction to this latest news. Poulsen said Raleigh, "This guy must have been good, really good. It was almost as if he had 3 lives. Neither woman knew about the others. He started having sex with Sandy about 2 years ago, added 25-year-old Kara Carter about 14 months ago, and 32-year-old Donna Fisher about 8 months ago." Raleigh knew that Poulsen and Zambrano were good detectives, probably second in the department after him and Leslie. He knew that if he needed to find any evidence, Poulsen and the Zambranos would find them, which they did the next day. After conducting a more thorough survey of the neighborhood, they spoke with an annoying resident of the block and received additional information. Helen Abernathy told detectives she had seen her friend dozens of times over the past 2 years. Leonardo at his house. She was of average height, had shoulder-length blonde hair, a curvy body, and was pretty, as far as she could tell from her house 3 doors down. The last time Helen saw her was at Leonard's house on Sunday afternoon, just after lunch. 2 detectives knew Raleigh's wife, Raleigh. Helen Abernathy's description of Leonard's girlfriend matched her perfectly. What was new was that she was at his house on a Sunday afternoon, which coincided with the time of the murder, Although Raleigh was suspended and did not participate in the investigation, Gray included him in the briefings of Poulsen and Zambrano out of courtesy. Raleigh sat practically frozen in place as the couple talked about what Helen Abernathy had told them. "Damn," he whispered when the pair finished their report. "She had the motive, the means, and the opportunity." The other three men in the room nodded quietly in agreement. "Even though I had my doubts that she was actually capable of killing someone, this is really bad, gentlemen," he said. During the next interrogation, Sandy again denied that she had seen Leonard on Sunday afternoon. "I told you that I was waiting for clients for the show. They never showed up. I sat in my car and read for 2 hours before I left," she insisted angrily. "Then how come one of Mr. Leonard's neighbors saw you at his house on Sunday afternoon, a little after noon?" "She's wrong. I was not there. She knows exactly what you look like after seeing you for the last 2 years. She chose your photo from a selection," Zambrano said. No. This can't be true," Sandy squealed. Sandy was scared when she returned home. Her lawyer explained to her what a murder conviction would mean unless the police suddenly found something that pointed to someone else. "Seriously, Raleigh, I didn't kill that two-faced idiot," wailed her. "I didn't know that he was cheating on me. You know that I couldn't kill." She suddenly stopped ranting when she realized that she had been doing the same thing lately. It was obvious that Raleigh doesn't trust her anymore. She knew she no longer deserved his trust. It was not lost on Raleigh that her assessment of Leonard changed from love to something much less when she learned that she was just one of the artist's several mistresses. Love can be so fleeting, he thought to himself. Raleigh and Sandy had been living like strangers for several months now, cooking their own food, doing their own laundry, and rarely communicating. Even when the children came to visit, Raleigh mostly kept to himself. It didn't take a genius to realize that Raleigh's relationship with his children had deteriorated almost to the breaking point as they continued to tell their father that he needed to accept his mother's infidelity and support her unconditionally during the trial. "I hope you two never have to experience that feeling of heartbreak," Raleigh told the kids during one disagreement. "I gave everything to her for 27 years. At some point, my love was not enough for her, and she found someone else, but apparently she could not figure out how to tell me or get rid of me." The wheels of justice turned slowly, and it took about 9 months before Sandy's murder trial began. But only 5 days passed before the jury returned with a guilty plea. Sandy sobbed uncontrollably in the courtroom. Several rows behind her sat impassively Raleigh. It had been a lifetime since they both said, "I do," in a small church in front of about 100 people. Something went wrong, he thought to himself. I thought we would grow old together, bouncing our grandchildren, maybe even our great-grandchildren on our knees. Did I ever really know her? However, he knew Sandy better than anyone in the world, and deep down he had a vague doubt that this woman could kill another person. However, his doubts were not taken into account. The evidence pointed to Sandy. After what she had done to him for the past 2 years, he had decided that he would not lose a moment of sleep worrying about what would happen to her. Raleigh was reinstated to field duty after his wife's trial, and he and Leslie were reunited. About a year later, they were sitting in a diner during their lunch break. Raleigh watched Leslie nibble on a bun when he noticed for the 1,000th time how much she looked like the woman who had become his ex-wife 4 months ago. "Why did you kill him, Les?" said Raleigh, a little louder than a whisper. Leslie never missed a beat in her chewing. She figured it was only a matter of time before Raleigh figured it out and she wouldn't disrespect him by playing dumb. "I was just going to hurt him a little, but then he started chattering and started saying all sorts of crap about you. I gave him the opportunity to verbally shoot you, and then I took a second shot at him, for real." Raleigh decided that he and Leslie needed to finish this conversation in the privacy of his car. He waited about 30 seconds as Leslie began, stuttering a little. "I found out that Sandy cheated on you about 2 months before I broke up with him," Leslie said. "I was wondering whether I should tell you. I knew it wouldn't be good for you or him. So, I finally decided to confront this bastard myself. I was just going to try to scare him into stopping contact with her, but he didn't get the hint. Then he started to mock you. Said that he and Sandy laughed all the time at her stupid husband. He said he wasn't afraid of you and wasn't going to stop, so I shot him. It's that simple. I used the spare key to your house that you gave me years ago to get Sandy's gun from the hiding place you also told me about. I didn't really plan on killing that idiot, but I wasn't going to use my own gun if I had to. So it was you or someone you knew who organized the Sunday show for Sandy that fell through? Asked Raleigh. She nodded her head and smiled sideways at him. Can I tell you something else? Leslie asked. It was Raleigh's turn to nod. I love you, Roll. For several years now. But I was never going to act on it until your stupid wife screwed it up. Now, well, I would like to be considered as a contender for the open place in your bed and your heart, she said. Raleigh looked surprised. You know, for a smart guy, you're really clueless, Roll. The two of them sat in the car silently for about a minute. What now, Rolly? Will you take me into custody, or should I surrender to the police? Rolly paused. So let me check if I'm getting the facts right, he finally said. The man who seduced my wife is dead, my ex is in prison for life, and the woman who loves me is sitting in the seat next to me. I'm happy with the way things are. Let's just keep this between you and me. Leslie smiled radiantly at Rolly. He smiled back at her, started the car, and they drove off. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.